Namaste. Welcome to the sixth edition of the Global Festival of Oneness, celebrating the life and works of Ādi Śaṅkara and organized by Indica Moksha. My name is Anuradha and I'm the host of this session. Let us start with a prayer. Sadashivasamarambham Śaṅkarācārya madhyamam asmadācārya paryantam vande guru paramparam. We're very pleased to have with us Siddhayogi Sriman Adinarayanan, and he's going to talk to us on the subject drawing inspirations from Śaṅkarācārya and Tamil Siddhas for Loka Sangraha. Before we get into the talk, I'd like to introduce the speaker. Siddhayogi Sriman Adinarayanan is a spiritual leader and co-founder of the Anadi Foundation, which he established along with his wife Matrushri Smriti Adinarayanan in 2015. He belongs to the spiritual paramparā of Mahavatar Kriya Babaji and has spent over 250 days in Mauna Tapasya. After a profound spiritual experience during his graduate studies in the US, Adinarayanan ji returned to India to dedicate himself to spirituality and serving society. He and his wife lead a yogic life of simplicity and purpose and have taught at various institutions including IIT Delhi before starting Anadi Foundation to share the essence of India's spiritual traditions with a wider audience. Namaste, Adinarayan ji.
Namaste, Anuradha ji. Thank you for the kind introduction. I definitely wish to congratulate Indica Moksha for organizing this very important conference. And this has great significance in the current times. It was always significant. Even the establishment, or the re-emergence of the Advaitic principles that Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad did more than 2000 or 2500 years ago. It shows us that constantly these principles have to be brought to the fore to guide humanity. And that way, Indica organizing this conference on oneness is a very very important event. And when we look at the Siddha systems, we belong to the Siddha Sampradaya. We are located near Payani in Tamil Nadu, India. And Payani is a very significant place of worship of Bhagavan Murugan. So Murugan is also called Kartikeya Swami or Shanmugar. He's known in the North India as Kartik Swami, the son of Bhagavan Shiva and Parvati. So Payani is a very significant sthala. It attracts a lot of astikas, dharmikas, who come to him for blessings. And this was established by Siddhar Bhoganatha, who did the pratishtha of the Navapashana Vigraha of Murugan, apparently about 5,000 years back. So we can, we are located about 15 kilometers from Payani on the way to Coimbatore. Our ashram is located in a place called Ivar Malai, which is also, it is like Payani, which has a big hill and a small hill. Like that, Ivar Malai has a big hill and a small hill. So we had the Saubhagya of with Shiva Kripa, the pratishtha of Ashtadik Linga around the Periya Ivar Malai, that is the bigger Ivar Malai, was performed and dedicated to the public. Now every Paurnami, people come in Girivala, that is going around the Giri Pradakshina. And we have a Dhyanalayam where we did the Pratishtha of our Gurunadar, Kriya Babaji, and Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad which for many might seem a very interesting combination, but it has deep significance for us. And then we also did the Pratishtha of Agastya, who is considered the foremost of the Siddhas. So all of them, Agastya, Kriya Babaji, and Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad we consider them to be Siddha Gurus as well, who guide us in the Siddha Sampradaya. So that way, when we look at the Sampradayas, the diverse Sampradayas, if we just to introduce, because this platform is of Indica Moksha, devoted to Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad-pada's Advaitic teachings. Let me also introduce the Siddha Sampradaya, because in this platform it is useful to introduce, I believe, because the nature of the discussion that we propose today is to bring out the deeper teachings, the deeper conjunctions in terms of the teachings, the principles, which are visible in Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad-pada's teachings and the Siddha Sampradaya's teachings. So those become very helpful. So that's why to introduce the Siddha Sampradaya. In Tamil Nadu, it is called the Padinettu Siddhargal tradition. Padinettu means 18. It also is connected to Padinen. Padi Endru Ennubavagal. So, or those who are constantly in the thought of Pati. In Shaiva Siddhanta, there is the teaching of Pati, Pashu, Pasham. So, Pati is that, we can call it Shivam, Shivatvam, which is the source of everything, which is also beyond all of this. So like that, if we look at those who constantly reinforce their alignment or their connection with the Pati, the Padinettu Siddhargal. So the 18th Siddha tradition, the foremost is recognized as Agastya, who was sent in our Puranas, it's mentioned, he was sent to the south of the Vindhyas by Bhagavan Shiva to balance the world. So Agastya, if we look at Agastya, he is foremost of the Siddhas. He is also, if we see Ṛgveda. So Ṛgveda, some sections are attributed to Agastya. And there are many works of Agastya in Sanskritam. There are many works of Agastya in Tamil as well. Similarly, if we see the other Siddhas, for example, Nandishwarar. So Nandishwarar is also called Nandinath in the Nath Sampradaya. In the South Sampradaya, he is called Nandishwar. So Nath, South. But it is not North and South, but just a play of words, just a pun. Harmless though. So if we look at the Nath Sampradaya, Nandinath, and then Bhogar is called Bhognath. Well, here he is called Bhogar. And then we have Tirumular, who is Sundaranath in the Nath Sampradaya. Gorakar in the Tamil Siddha tradition is called Goraknath. Similarly, Machamuni in the Tamil Siddha tradition is called Matsyendranath. So if we see it, it is a pan-India orientation to say the least. So it is not so much just the South Indian tradition of the Siddhas, but the contribution of the Siddhas are found in the Puranas, in the Itihasas. Agastya clearly guided Sri Ramachandra Prabhu. So Bhagavan Rama in his avatara, in his mission on Bhuloka, was clearly guided by Agastya. We find this explicit mention in the Valmiki Ramayana. So the Siddha tradition, if we see, is not limited to just one part of India. In that spirit also, it is the spirit of oneness that we find in the Siddha tradition, which applies everywhere. For example, in this year's Kashi Tamil Changamam, the theme was Agastya. So, because there are such deep works, and if we look at Lalita Sahasranamam, that was revealed by Hayagriva to Agastya. That is chanted by so many astikas, dharmikas, even now. So that way the Siddha tradition has not been an isolated tradition. And the worship of Murugan was also looked at as Subramanya. So that has also not been an isolated tradition of the South. It's equally applicable in the North as well. For example, sometime back I came to know that in the Devi Bhagavatam tradition, the Vyasa, it's not Maharishi Vedavyasa, but the Vyasa who starts the narration is none other than Kartik Swami, who is none other than Murugan. So like that we see even now there are important Tamil Siddha texts which are attributed to Agastya, Bhogar, Tirumular, Subramanyar. So Subramanyar Jnanam is a Upadesha of Subramanyar or Murugan to Agastya. So these are all existing texts, existing works that are available. Obviously, for the modern audience, just to give a orientation, these texts these are simply accepted as historical in nature. Not looking at it from a modern historical perspective, which is more considered Eurocentric. Without getting the approval of scholars rooted in the Eurocentric view of history. These are considered valid historical sources, which we can refer to, and which has continued. There has been continuing lineages that have studied these texts. For example, the Adinams in Tamil Nadu, which are similar to Akhadas or the Mathas, who protect dharma and who spread. So they study and disseminate these works, the knowledge contained in these works, as a traditional religious dharma. And in these texts, we find deep concepts. So concepts of Vedanta is there, concepts of Siddhanta are there. In fact, Tirumular, a great Siddha, whose Jiva Samadhi is supposed to be in Tiruvavadurai, which is a very famous seat or the Adinam, who gave the Chengol to, at that time, to the Prime Minister Nehruji, and recently to Prime Minister Modi ji. So you can see these are important seats of religious institutions. These are called Adinam. So Tiruvavadurai is also the Jiva Samadhi of Tirumular, who is a great Siddha Purusha, who is the acknowledged Nayanmar, Tirumula Nayanar. So Nayanmar in the Saiva tradition, whose text Tirumandiram of 3047 verses in Tamil, they are also included in the Panniru Tirumurai. That means the 12 important texts of the Shaiva tradition. So like this, we can see important connections through history. And also that combines all of Hindu culture, the Indian culture, right? So it has all these interweavings. So it's a continuing tradition. And this, we don't need to look at any Eurocentric certification of whether this is historical or not, because it's a continuing tradition protected by the mathas. For example, Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad-pada established the mathas. Now, this might not find mention in the Eurocentric historical traditions, but this is clearly a living tradition that even now we have the Mathadipatis who hold very important position in society, religious, spiritual, even interacting with society and guiding society, guiding the purushartha of individuals and society. So, if we just look for historical records from a Eurocentric perspective, that is one way of approaching it. But as a living tradition, when we approach it, most of our, for example, temples are living traditions. For thousands of years, there has been Nitya Puja, Nitya Aradhana, everything going on for thousands of years. So this is this point I wish to highlight, because otherwise the discussion of say Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad-pada or the Siddha tradition is very tough for many people to be open to, because it's a living tradition. But everyone thinks it's we just need to take the use of whatever is useful now, but not worry about whether it actually existed or not. Maybe, for example, when I interact with young people, they might even have an orientation that Harry Potter is more valid than all of these, So that's why this clarification, I feel, is very helpful. Just as we have records of, say, the various kings, the various, say, prime ministers, recent times, and so on. There are records of Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad-pada, or the even more ancient times, Agastya, and so on. So these are not, one need not disbelieve it, because these are also can be looked at when we look at the pramana, the valid sources of knowledge, which proves even the historicity of such things. It is not just linguistic analysis, but also living traditions, where these Siddha Mahapurushas actively guide humanity. So in that sense, we also look at non-modernistic approaches to establishing the authenticity of the tradition, which include written or verbal works which are transmitted from generation to generation, which are held as very sacrosanct, like Tirumala's Tirumandiram. It's one of the Panniru Tirumurai, or the 12 important texts which are studied as part of Shaiva Siddhanta. Or we have Bhogar Saptakandam, which is the 7,000 verses written by Bhogar or Bhognath. If we look at the historical validity of it from a Western perspective or a Eurocentric perspective, it might sound fantabulous, something that is incredible, which is difficult to believe in as an authentic source of history. While if we look at the pramana, you have, let's say, a Shabda Pramana, then whose Shabda is considered as a Pramana or a valid source of knowledge? in that, if we are ready to believe in his story, someone else's story of ourselves, and discard the trust in our own sources, then we are doing ourselves a disservice. Because what is the proof that Bhogar did the Navapashana Vigraha of Murugan? He is saying it, and there is a living tradition to authenticate it. What more do we need? So these become critical. There are other sources that approach that we can use. Some of the sources might be linked to, say, for example, Jyotisha Shastra. So there is Ashtamangala Prashna, where we ask the Devata itself. There is Nadi Shastra, not this Nadi, but the Jyotisha Nadi. And there are also approaches like the Jiva Nadi. So these are all traditional approaches, but non-modernistic approaches, where modernity is suffers from this limitation of drishti when it approaches to methodologies, where the methodologies may not include these traditional methodologies, which are considered valid. So that's where our pramana might be more holistic than Western approaches to establishing the historicity of such traditions. So this I wish to mention it, because otherwise one can get into this thing of is it even valid? Are we just discussing principles? While the historical aspects, let's not go there. Many might be uncomfortable with this. And that's because of a Eurocentric idea of history, especially the colonizing part, where European nations established colonies across the world. North America was colonized, South America, Africa, Asia, Australia, everything was colonized. So before that colonization, what existed that was not given a lot of importance. But that's where, if we look at Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad is definitely before colonization. If we look at the episodes that occur in his life, that would have elements from records that we know of, that would have elements of Daiva. Definitely, Devata was, so he is called a Shiva Amsha. So Shiva Amsha means we have to recognize the Puranas. We have to recognize non-Eurocentric sources of knowledge. We have to acknowledge. Otherwise, we will not be able to accept him as a historical personality or accept the episodes in his life equally. Similarly, if we look at Kanaka Dahara Stotram, this is again from what we hear from authentic sources, right? So Kanaka Dahara Stotram, if we look at, then that would appear magical. So that's why people might de-link those aspects and just focus on the shlokas for whatever reasons, for religious reasons, for bhakti, for their philosophical import, for their language import, and so on. But if you look at the episode itself, it is called a Siddhi. So very interesting. Yeah, if we de-link the Siddhi part, the Siddhi part is related to the Siddha. So that's where the words come in. So Siddhi, Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad in his life clearly demonstrated such Siddhis. We are going by, extant information that people believe to be true, right? But might not be comfortable with. That's why I'm using this platform to establish some foundation where we can be comfortable. It's not that we don't need to shrink away from these siddhis that Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad clearly in his lives it has been recorded. Similarly, another is where the river starts flowing because of his prayer. The river starts flowing near his ancestral home, that is clearly a Siddhi, right? So that's where these, if they are looked at as historical episodes, obviously when we say history, we are not referring to his story, not the Eurocentric idea, but more in terms of our own, what has been captured and transmitted through generations, right? Clearly, these have been mentioned. Similarly, we see the episode of Parakaya Pravesha. Parakaya Pravesha, similarly, is a Siddhi that he demonstrated, right? Now, the philosophical import of it, is definitely there for everyone to see. Because in the process of establishing dharma, the deep philosophical principles were brought forth and established very clearly. That is the principle of oneness, or the Advaita. That is very significant. But what is equally significant is also the episodes in his life, which is a clear demonstration of Siddhis. Now, Siddhis means we have to acknowledge there are deeper traditions. For example, it is clearly mentioned that he got an extension to his life for his work. He was blessed by great Mahapurushas like Bhagavan Veda Vyasa. Now, if we look at Bhagavan Veda Vyasa, then we have to acknowledge that there are concepts like Chiranjeevis. Chiranjeevis again means Siddhi, Siddha. These concepts become interlinked because the concept of, say, longevity or Kaya Kalpa, where you retain the Kaya for a very long period of time, those become very significant, very critical. So now we have started talking gradually, moving into the topic of Siddhi related to Siddha, which Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad Padal's life captures. Very significant. So his teachings are well recorded, but his life has been transmitted with whatever, not the current idea of history, but with Shraddha if we take it. That is why it is not just an intellectual analysis, it's also an approach with Shraddha. Then we clearly see the presence of such great Mahapurushas who are of the Vedic tradition, who are also of the Puranic tradition, like Bhagavan Veda Vyasa. We find such presence in the life of Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad Pada. Very significant. That means his teachings cannot be just extrapolated. They are very much situated in the larger Hindu context, where all of these other texts, including the Puranas, find a very important part, a very important role. So even the Itihasa, Purana, all these find a very important role. That means it is a continuity. From the Puranic times, the great Siddhas, the Mahapurushas, the Rishis that have been mentioned, continue to play a role in Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad Padal's life and continue to play a role even in our lives right now. So this is very interesting. Otherwise, history, we just generally look at it as past and gone. But this gives a very different perspective altogether. That means Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad Padal, who displayed so many Siddhis, continues to play a role even now. So it's very interesting, and not just philosophically, but in reality, actually. Now, that's where if we say continue to play a role, and it is not just philosophical in nature, not just through the texts, then we look at other traditions that are traditionally valid, like the Nadi Shastram, like the Jiva Nadi, like that, Ashtamangala Prashna, where you can question That also establishes the role of the devatas and so on in our lives. Very significant. And this gives the complexity to Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma, which is difficult to handle for modern sciences, modernity. Very difficult to handle. For example, an episode like Parakaya Pravesha, which is a typical Siddhi, which is demonstrated by many Mahatmas. So, Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad-pada is not unique in demonstrating this. For example, Tirumular is a great Siddha Purusha, where he demonstrated, he was Sundaranathar coming through the Agaya Margam. Very interesting. And he sees a sight. He is coming to view, meet Agastya. And he sees a sight that moves him deeply. Great rishis, great Siddha Purushas do not have moha. They are not moved by wealth or land or any outward show, but they are moved by compassion, compassion of suffering humanity, compassion of suffering jiva rashis, any living being. They are moved by compassion. So that way he sees the sight which moves him greatly, where there is a dead cow herd and surrounding him are the various cows crying over the dead cow herd. Their nata is gone. Nadam poitam. So he decides to revive the body of the cow herd. So he preserves his body in a secluded spot carefully and then does parakaya pravesha. Parakaya means another kaya, body, para, which is not your own, pravesha, entering. So he enters the body of Moolan, who is the dead cow herd. On seeing their Nathan, live, all the cows are so happy. And he leads them back to the village to safety. And his wife finds that his behavior is strange. It is not like before. He does not display the affection that she expects. And he is aloof. He does not enter the home. So she represents it to the village elders. Generally, the village is a close-knit community. So if there is a problem at home, you represent it. The community comes together to solve that problem. There is no problem of anonymity. Now, an urban problem is anonymity. We don't know each other. So she represents it to the village elders and everyone goes together and they find that Moolan is a changed person. He is they clearly recognize in him signs of greatness, of a Mahapurusha. So from then on, he is called Tirumular, and that is in Tiruvavadurai. So there he composes the 3,000 odd verses of the, or called the Mandiram, in Tamil language. Now this Parakaya Pravesha, if we look at it, is clearly recorded. Now, will this be part of a history syllabus in our school in Tiruvavadurai? No, it is not taught as history. While actually there are records that it is history. So that's why initially we made this distinction. Whose story are we talking of? This is our story. There is no problem in record. There are records and there is a live tradition that even now studies the Tirumandiram. So there is no problem in acknowledging Tirumular and acknowledging his life, which has been recorded. Similarly, there is no problem in acknowledging Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad-pada and his life that has been mentioned. And Tirumular's life is mentioned as more ancient than Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad-pada. Right. So we see Parakaya Pravesha demonstrated multiple instances and not rejected as unscientific, or clearly, just taking the principles mentioned in Bhagavad Padal's work, or just the principles mentioned in Tirumandiram, will be like just looking at the essence, but not the whole context that created the essence in the first place. That's why the context also has to be acknowledged. These Mahatmas, these Mahapurushas, these Siddha Mahapurushas demonstrated such Siddhis, and these are recorded. And it's a living tradition. So that way, if we look at, the teachings arise from such lived experiences that continue to this date, right? Lived experience. Even recently, there was a Vallalar in the Tamil tradition. So he displayed such siddhis. He is very famous in Tamil tradition. So we see the continuity factor, not just their teachings, but the teachings arise from such lived experiences, and these lived experiences are not individualistic or ad hoc or relegated to some mystical traditions. No, we are talking of existing well-accepted traditions, sampradayas, well respected, well adopted in daily lives, guiding very serious scholars, very serious authorities, scientific authorities, and also the lay people. So it is well accepted in current reality. So it need not be rejected as an isolated instance and hence does not fit into the main narrative. So these siddhis are well acknowledged in mainstream. So this gives us one foothold into understanding this further. So when we look at the larger Puranic tradition, we will similarly find such siddhis mentioned. So we see in the Siddha tradition, there are names like Tirumular or Agastya, which are considered historical people, historical personalities, and who have guided, who are mentioned in Ṛgveda, so in Vedanta and Siddhanta. So Tirumular, for example, in Tirumandiram, clearly mentions Vedanta and Siddhanta, not in opposition with each other. And this is going way back thousands of years. That means these have been coexistent traditions, coexistent sampradayas, or coexistent spiritual religious principles guiding the people just as they are guiding now, guiding at that time as well. And they clearly quote from even more ancient texts. That means there is a continuity of knowledge that guides our rishis, our siddhas, leading up to modernity. And there is no problem in accepting this, at least for astikas or dharmikas. And the principle of oneness is mentioned in diverse ways. So the experience of oneness is also mentioned. So when we say, now for example, Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti, mentioned in the Mandukya Upanishad, and the Mandukya Karika of Gaudapadacharya. And Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad Padal has written commentaries on this. Similar is the commentary written we find in Tirumandiram, which is a Siddha work, which talks of Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti, and Turiyai. So, Nenavu, Kanavu, Urakam. As Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti. And the Urakam is also there. Deep sleep is also there. And Turiya is there. Turiya Tita is also mentioned. And in the analysis of that, the tattvas are brought forth. If we look at the tattvas, like Pancha Mahabhuta, Panchikruta Pancha Mahabhuta. So these are interesting principles that actually guide even sciences, because these Pancha Mahabhuta, Panchikruta Pancha Mahabhuta, these are found in Tantra, and these are also found in, scientific applications like health sciences, like Ayurveda Shastra, based on Nyaya Vaisheshika, that work on such tattvas. Like that, the same thing we find in the Siddha tradition, which carry, for example, 96 Tattvangal. So 96 tattvas mentioned by Tirumular and Tirumandiram. And these tattvas, a description of this, and the description looked at from the entire spectrum, establishing the pramana. Pramano. That means, pratyaksha and agama or shabda pramana. Everything in between. The whole idea being the agama or the shabda pramana is established for each jiva, jivatma, to realize it for themselves. Realize these principles when one has a direct realization through jnana. So the jnana being all the works of the Guru tradition, of Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad-pada, of the Siddhas also, and these being the format for approaching the jnana, by which one's jnana chakshuhu awakens and one has an experience of it. An experience from multiple angles, including Siddhis and such phenomena, which are recorded in Bhagavad-padal's life. If we consider the context of the life itself, not just the teachings. Similar is the life of Tirumular itself, and not just the teachings present in Tirumandiram. So like that, if we see, it is to arrive, there is a lived experience that is also forming the base for the teachings. And the teaching is of the principle of Advaita, expressed in diverse ways. For example, Siddha Tirumular calls it Anbe Shivam. Love is Shivam. And Shivam is to do with the Shivatva. That means the Tattva. If we go into hair-splitting details, we can definitely look at where all the differences are. Okay. That is another way to approach it. But a very simple way to approach it is, how is it applicable for us now? That's where how can we use the teachings to support each other? It is like the mirroring, where with exposure to the principles of Advaita, but from the lens of the Siddhas, from Siddhanta, when we approach it, then we grow in deeper experience, and that leading to deeper conviction. That is a very useful purpose for approaching it from multiple angles. Right? Because all these Mahatmas would have revealed it based on their lived experience. Because it is not like the Western concept of a philosopher, where the philosophy is just a teaching. their life does not reflect it. So their life is not their message. But in all our Mahapurushas, Mahatmas, we see their life is the message. It's directly. So Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad lived by the message that he was sharing in the world. Similarly, Tirumular lived by the message that he was sharing in the world. So there was no dichotomy between the teaching and their life itself. So this is very significant. If there is a dichotomy, then their life is different. We cannot analyze their life to arrive at the message that they were teaching. Here, since it's one spectrum, the pratyaksha need not be removed from the agama or the shabda pramana. Where from, if it's just philosophy, then the shabda is different, pratyaksha anubhava is very different. Their life does not reflect that moksha. So this is like a jivan mukta. They are living that and teaching that as well. So when we look at Advaita, those principles that we find in the Siddha life as well, Siddha system as well. The Siddhargal clearly talk of these, and their life is a demonstration of these. For example, Ande Shivam. That's a very deep concept where everything that is the source of all of that, if love is the only thing, then we might ask, no, but we are not able to perceive it. Likewise, if it is all Advaita, but no, my existing reality is not that. I'm able to see subject, object. There is that differentiation. That's what our current perception is. That's where the spiritual journey is to move from our current perception of this, this subject-object divided reality to something that heals it, that closes the gap of this divide. And that through, if we come through direct experience of these principles, then we start applying different darshana shastra, which are applicable for specific kinds of experiences and expressions. For example, the yoga darshana, samadhi as yoga. We see in all of their lives samadhi as yoga being illustrated, which leads to the Siddhis, which is a demonstration of the Advaitic principle. So it's the principle that becomes evident through the demonstration of these Siddhis, through yoga as samadhi. So that way yoga is not different from Vedanta or different from Siddhanta, like that. No, we start seeing it as a flow. And that becomes very important in current times, because we are not looking at just an isolation and a transcendent system. We are also looking at a system that can guide humanity into the future. And that's where looking at the teachings of Bhagavad-pada, Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad-pada, Advaitic teachings, in the light of the Siddha tradition becomes very helpful. Because in the Siddha tradition, those teachings have been put alive. So everything is considered an expression of that one principle. And the paramparā, however we name it. But definitely those expressions become very important. We cannot negate the expressions. It is just like all of this is Maya Rupa. Maya is illusory, but the illusion need not be invalid. We don't need to invalidate illusory appearance. Just like, for example, if we see a movie, even this episode, for example, This is Maya Rupa. There is just a digital recording, and digitally it's just audio and video. That is Maya Rupa. It's illusory. You can delete that file. It is just frames per second rendering, which makes you believe, there is something going on. So it's clearly Maya Rupa, but this Maya Rupi content is for the purpose of illustrating principles of dharma or of moksha. So that way the illusory reality is not invalidated in the Siddha system. In the life of Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad also we see this. He has not invalidated. He has, there are stotras, stuti of various devatas. He has not invalidated, saguṇa upasana. We see various stotras. So his teachings don't invalidate these. It lead to better expressions, divine expressions. And that's where the principle of Advaita, in the Siddha system, we see a full-blown expression. If we look at the various texts of Agastya, in fact, Ādi Śaṅkara is credited with some Tamil texts as well. I came across some publications from Tamarai Nulagam on various other shastras, not just Advaita, of credited to Ādi Śaṅkara. So we see the expressions of the principle of oneness, the expression of the principles of Advaita are far and wide, because it is just like now all of the various education that we pursue, including engineering or medicine or arts and sciences or literature, all of these, the highest degree is the degree of philosophy. It's a PhD, a doctorate of philosophy. Like that, the Advaita guides everything, literally. And those are expressed in diverse ways. And that is this creation. So the Siddha system deals with the creation, keeping the Advaitic principle at the core principle. And that's where, if we look at the content available in the Siddha systems, we will have content, wide-ranging content, which will have philosophy. The methodology of approaching the subject is not like a modern format. If we look at Bhogar's Saptakandam or Tirumala's Tirumandiram or Agastya's Ilaka Saumya Sagaram, these are all content where there will be Advaitic principles interwoven with saguṇa upasana, puja vidhis, interwoven with rasavadam or mercury preparations, health systems, ethics, purusharthas, aram, purul, imbam, all these interwoven into the same text, including some Puranas, some history, all of these interwoven as one text. So they are very highly multidisciplinary. So that all of that is considered an expression of the core non-dual principle. So that's how the nirguṇa and the saguṇa is healed. There is no dichotomy. It's a full-blown expression of the Advaitic principles that we find in the Siddha system, in the Siddha literature. So, and hence, when we study the Moksha Shastra, when we study Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad-padal's work, if we also study his life, then it'll help us lead multidimensional lives. And from there emerges the principles of Advaita that he clearly lived by, demonstrated through his multidimensional lives, which is still inspiring us. and it will inspire the world for eons to come. There's no doubt about that. Similar is the Siddha system, which has inspired humanity for a very long time, and it will still continue to inspire, and it will lead, if we project this into the future, which is very helpful for everybody. If we look at the Siddha system, they clearly talk of andam, perandam. That means, let's say there are preparations like Gyavuna Guligai. That means space sciences. We talk, when we say Ramayana, Mahabharata, you will see multi-loka interactions. That means there is the concept of devatas visiting Bhuloka. There is the concept of interaction with, say, extraterrestrial beings. And that kind of an interaction, when we project into the future, we would definitely need to be situated in the principle of oneness to be able to interact in a holistic sense with others in the universe or in the galaxy. That will also help humanity grow in the depth of consciousness required to be part of the galactic family. And that, I feel, is a significant importance of the principle of Advaita. Because then we don't need to fear anybody, because the core principle is the same, but gets manifested in diverse ways across this universe. And that's where the Siddha system takes it forward. By going deep back, we can take it forward, clearly situating ourselves in the principle of oneness or Advaita. So that's how we draw inspiration from the teachings of the Siddha system and Ādi Śaṅkara Bhagavad-pada in a very practical sense. So with this, I stop here. It's been wonderful interacting.
Thank you, Adinarayanji. This was a wonderful talk where you wove the principles of Advaita Vedanta with the teachings of Siddha, which includes Stotram, Rasavada, Purana, Itihasa, and everything. And it's finally the expression of really the non-dual principle. We are really grateful that this knowledge is being made available to us in a language that we understand. Once again, our pranams to you. Viewers, we have many such wonderful talks. As the festival is coming to a close, tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. India time, we have the talk by Swami Satchidananda Saraswati on Adhyaropa Apavada, Ādi Śaṅkara's master key to the teaching of Advaita Vedanta. So please do join us and benefit from this knowledge share. Thank you and goodbye.
Namaste. Thank you all. Thank you to Indica. Thank you, Anuradha ji, and thank you, Nitin ji. I definitely wish all the viewers enlightenment. There is the goal of the conference to attain to that oneness within, that Advaitic experience within.
Thank you very much, Srimanji.
Namaste. Samasta loka sukhino bhavantu. Namaste.